She didn't flinch when they handcuffed her at the civilian shooting range. No badge, no explanation. Just a quiet woman hitting impossible targets and refusing to identify herself. Everyone assumed it would be a routine arraignment in a small-town courtroom. But then the heavy oak doors creaked open. A Navy admiral in full-dress uniform entered. Every military veteran in the room instinctively stood. The judge paled. The atmosphere shifted. Whatever they thought they knew about this woman was wrong. Rewind to that morning. At dawn, fog rolled across a remote shooting range on Maine's coast. Among the early arrivals was a woman in her mid-30s. Nothing about her stood out. Faded jeans, a plain gray jacket, ball cap pulled low. But her rifle? Custom-built. Her technique? Flawless. Frank Holden, retired Navy and range officer, watched from the booth. In decades of experience, he could size someone up in seconds. But this woman didn't fit any mold. Her shots were dead on. Not just close, surgical. Then she started hitting targets no civilian should be able to see, let alone strike. No scope adjustments. Just instinct and impossible skill. Something's not right, one shooter whispered. Frank agreed. Within 20 minutes, 2 local officers showed up. They asked for ID and a permit. She calmly said she had neither. Her voice controlled. Her posture military. Her belongings? A cryptic notebook filled with coordinates and a keycard with no markings. When they cuffed her, she didn't resist. But as they led her to the car, Frank noticed something odd. Her eyes constantly scanned the tree line, the ridge, the sky. She was calculating something. At the sheriff's office, she said nothing. No name. No address. No protest. Just quiet patience. Fingerprint scan? Nothing in local, state, or even federal databases. Cameras caught her examining the layout of the station, noting exits and blind spots. Every move was measured. Intentional. They processed her, booked her, isolated her. But she was never rattled. It wasn't defiance. It was confidence. Like she knew the system couldn't touch her for long. That night, her arraignment was scheduled. Rumors swirled. Some said she was a terrorist. Others swore she was CIA. Then morning came, and the courtroom filled fast. She sat silently as charges were read: illegal possession of firearms, refusal to identify, possible terror links. That's when the Admiral entered. He didn't ask permission. He didn't need to. Flanked by 2 officers, he walked straight to the bench and handed over a sealed file. The judge opened it and froze. "This case," she announced, "is dismissed. Effective immediately. Classified under national security." Then she looked at the woman differently. The bailiff removed the handcuffs. And finally, the woman spoke. Calmly. "Apologies for the inconvenience, sir." The Admiral didn't hesitate. "On the contrary, Commander, the Navy apologizes to you." Silence. Then everyone understood. The courtroom, agents, officers, they all stood, snapped to attention. She wasn't a threat. She wasn't a suspect. She was a decorated Navy commander. One whose record wasn't just classified, it was legendary. Detective Wells watched as her demeanor shifted. No longer hiding, she stood tall. The quiet woman with the worn jacket now radiated authority. Every eye followed her as she exited the courtroom, not as a criminal, but as a ghost returning from deep shadows. They tried to make her disappear. But you can't erase a legend. The courtroom had emptied, but the ripple effects of what had occurred were only beginning. The officer stood, offering a respectful nod to both the Admiral and the woman. "Thank you for your understanding, Your Honor," the Admiral said. "Commander Hayes has been operating under classified directives. The situation required discretion." Outside the courthouse, the air buzzed with confusion and curiosity. Reporters gathered like a storm front, hungry for answers. Commander Hayes, now dressed in civilian clothes provided by the Navy, stood beside the Admiral near a black government SUV. Sheriff Daniels approached, his voice measured but firm. "Admiral, with all due respect, we need answers. We've been treating this like a national threat." "I understand, Sheriff," the Admiral replied. Commander Hayes is one of our most decorated special operators. Her presence here was part of an active counterterrorism operation. She poses no threat to your community. Quite the opposite. Detective Wells stepped forward, his tone sincere. Commander, I owe you an apology. She looked him in the eye, no longer guarded, no longer hiding. No apology necessary, Detective. You were doing your job. An elderly man wearing a VFW cap approached slowly. Ma'am, I was a corpsman with the Marines. Desert Storm. I've seen that look in the field. I knew there was something different about you. Thank you for whatever it is you do. She shook his hand firmly. Thank you for yours. The Admiral checked his watch. Commander Hayes, we should go. Debriefing in D.C. Operation Silent Harbor isn't over. Sheriff Daniels froze. Silent Harbor? The port threat from last year. The Admiral only gave a cryptic nod. Much of what Commander Hayes has done will never be known, but lives were saved because of her work. A reporter tried to push in. Commander, can you comment? No comment, she said, firm and calm. And I'd appreciate privacy. As she and the Admiral moved toward the vehicle, the most unexpected thing happened. The very officers who had arrested and processed her just a day earlier now formed an impromptu honor corridor. The military personnel present, including the bailiffs, snapped to attention, saluting as she passed. Detective Wells watched, finally understanding what had felt so off about her. She hadn't been hiding guilt, she had been trained to hide greatness. At sunset, the shooting range stood quiet. Frank, the retired Navy vet and range officer, checked the last lane before locking up. A government SUV pulled in, and Commander Hayes stepped out. Her energy was different now. No more need to disguise her strength. I'm here for my gear, she said. Frank nodded. Sheriff had it returned. Special courier. I kept it safe. He retrieved the case. As she checked its contents, Frank cleared his throat. 20 years Navy. Submarines. Nothing fancy like what you do, but I had a feeling. She smiled slightly. Most people only see what they expect to see. That rifle. That's not standard issue. It's not, she replied. She stepped into the lane, assembled the rifle, and without a scope, fired one shot into the fading light. Frank checked with binoculars. Bullseye. Impossible by any civilian standard. Thank you for not intervening when they came for me, she said. Wasn't my place. But I did make a call. Old Navy buddy. Works at the Pentagon. She nodded. Then you probably saved a few careers. You coming back? He asked. She glanced toward the harbor. Some of us are always around. You just don't see us. Frank offered a crisp salute as she drove off into the dusk. 2 weeks later, Detective Wells answered a call at his desk. Detective Wells, this is Admiral Wilson. We met during the incident with Commander Hayes. Yes, sir. She's receiving a classified commendation at Naval Station Norfolk. She asked that you be invited. Wells was stunned. I'd be honored. Though I'm still surprised. I was the one who arrested her. Sometimes, the ones who challenge us most teach us the most. We've arranged clearance. The next morning, Wells arrived at Norfolk. The ceremony was small. No press, no cameras. Just officers who spoke with their presence, not their words. Admiral Wilson stood at the podium. Today we honor Commander Alexandra Hayes for extraordinary service during Operation Silent Harbor. While details remain classified, I can say this. She spent 11 months undercover, dismantled an active threat, and prevented coordinated attacks along the eastern seaboard. Wells watched as Hayes stepped forward in full dress uniform, rows of ribbons on her chest. She was unrecognizable from the woman in cuffs. She radiated command presence. She graduated first in her class at Coronado, the Admiral continued. She became one of the first female operators in the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. While her record may never be made public, let it be known in this room, she is among the finest we've ever trained. After the ceremony, Wells approached her. Congratulations, Commander. Thank you for coming, Detective, she said, offering her hand. I'm sorry. Again. No apology needed. You did your job. Thoroughly. That's rare. He hesitated. Couldn't you have identified yourself? She led him to a quieter corner. The mission wasn't over. We had reason to believe there were leaks, contacts embedded in local law enforcement. If word got out that I was treated differently, the entire operation would have unraveled. You let yourself get arrested, Wells said, shaking his head. Sometimes, the best way to keep a cover is to live it. An officer signaled her. She nodded to Wells. Good to see you, Detective. Keep asking the right questions. As she left, Admiral Wilson appeared beside him. Impressive woman, isn't she? Sir, Wells said, I've never met anyone like her. Few have, the Admiral said. We could use someone like you. If you ever consider a change, my office is open. 6 months later, Wells stood on the deck of a naval vessel, watching the Maine coast disappear. He had joined NCIS. His first assignment, liaison to special operations along the eastern seaboard. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Some of us are always around. Welcome aboard. Wells smiled, recognizing the words. He might never see her again, but he now understood people like Commander Hayes, operating in the shadows, protecting the light, never asking to be seen. And now, he'd help make sure the world remained safe enough for them to keep doing it. The next time someone like Commander Hayes needs to maintain cover, there will be protocols in place, systems designed to protect both national security and the local authorities just doing their jobs. A Navy captain approached Detective Wells as the sun rose behind them. We've received reports of unusual activity at a private shooting range near our next port, the captain said. Thought you might want to take point. Wells gave a slight nod. Yes, sir. I'll look into it. He opened the preliminary report and scanned the details. A woman, average in appearance, was hitting targets at impossible distances. He smiled to himself. Some things never change. Months passed. Wells settled into his role with NCIS, helping develop new protocols to identify special operators during civilian encounters. His experience with Commander Hayes became a case study, now used in training sessions for police departments up and down the coast. Then, one stormy evening, as he worked late in his office, a knock echoed on his door. Standing there was Commander Hayes. Same low cap. Same deliberate anonymity. But her presence still cut through the air like a blade. Detective, she said. It's Agent now, he replied with a slight smile. Didn't expect to see you again. Plans change, she said, taking a seat. I've been told about the protocols you helped build. They're working. Your work has been noticed. She slid a folder across his desk. We need someone like you for an upcoming operation. Wells opened the folder and began reading. His eyes narrowed as the implications set in. A joint task force. Domestic threats with international links. Operating in the shadows where jurisdiction blurred and risks multiplied. He looked up. Why me? Commander Hayes met his gaze with those same laser-sharp eyes he remembered from the courtroom. Because when you arrested me, you knew something was off, but you followed the law anyway. You put duty above instinct. That's exactly what we need. He leaned back, taking a long breath. When do we start? She stood. Tomorrow. 0600, same range. And this time, she added, with a faint smirk, leave the handcuffs at home. As she disappeared into the rain, Wells sat in silence for a long moment. 6 months ago, he was a small-town detective. Now, he was holding a classified folder marked Silent Harbor 2. Tomorrow wasn't just another mission. It was the beginning of something bigger. At dawn, Frank, the range officer, unlocked the gate like he had for the past 15 years. But today was different. The lights were already on. Hello, he called out, instinctively touching the revolver holstered on his hip. It's just me, Frank, came a calm voice. Commander Hayes sat at his desk, reviewing satellite images. We need your range for 72 hours. Exclusive access. That's a big ask. It's hunting season, he said. She slid an envelope across the desk. Frank peeked inside. The check inside had enough zeros to cover 6 months of expenses. That'll do. Though you know you didn't have to. We do things properly, she said. Especially when no one's watching. By midday, the The range had transformed into a full tactical hub. Unmarked SUVs, disguised comms vans, maps on the walls. Men and women in civilian clothing moved with disciplined precision, military but invisible. Wells arrived last, bringing NCIS equipment. Frank shook his hand. Couldn't say no when my country calls. Wells grinned. Commander Hayes can be persuasive. She gathered everyone for briefing. We've identified a potential security threat within 50 miles of this location, she began. Intelligence suggests something significant is planned within the next 48 hours. These are our 3 suspected locations. She gestured to the maps. 2 residential neighborhoods and a commercial district. Wells frowned. We can't just storm civilian zones. Exactly, she replied. That's why we needed someone who knows how to operate within the law. The next 24 hours moved with surgical precision. Surveillance, data gathering, quiet coordination with local law enforcement. Every move designed to avoid tipping off their target. Frank watched from the edge of it all, quietly impressed. These people weren't just soldiers. They were something else, more precise, more focused, more dangerous. Late that night, one of the analysts called out, "We've got movement." Thermal feeds showed figures moving in a derelict waterfront warehouse, listed under a fake shell company. 8 individuals. Weapons cache. Communications gear. Wells leaned in. Commander Hayes nodded slowly. This is it. But now it gets tricky. We have probable cause, but this needs to transition to a civilian law enforcement operation. Wells picked up the phone. Time to make this official. Contact the tactical response team, Commander Hayes ordered quietly. They'll need a briefing. Give them the minimum, foreign-trained operatives planning a domestic attack. Nothing about our unit or mission parameters. Wells nodded and began coordinating with local authorities. Then Hayes turned to Frank. We need one more thing from you. Name it, he said without hesitation. When this is over, certain details will need to disappear. Some of the people you met, the equipment you saw, the nature of the operation. Frank gave a knowing smile. Commander, I spent 20 years keeping secrets for the Navy. Some habits don't break. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. That's why we came here first. Wells said you were reliable. Just before dawn, the raid began. Tactical teams moved in, local SWAT, federal agents. Hayes and her team held overwatch, ready to intervene if things went sideways. They didn't. The operation went clean. 8 arrests. A massive weapons seizure. Data caches that would feed federal analysts for months. The press was told it was a routine joint task force operation. Anonymous tips. Nothing more. By noon, the range was returning to normal. Commander Hayes's team had vanished, gear loaded into unmarked vehicles, leaving no trace they were ever there. Frank replaced the last target stands when Wells approached. Thank you, Wells said simply. For what? Frank replied with a grin. According to the news, I had nothing to do with anything. Exactly, Wells said and walked off. Commander Hayes approached Frank one last time. This range seems to be a magnet for interesting activity, she said. Just a place where people practice their skills, Frank replied. Some a little more specialized than others. She handed him a plain white business card, just a number. If you notice anyone else with unusual talents, call this. It reaches people who'd be interested. Recruiting, he asked. Always, she said. The right people are hard to find. And harder to recognize. They find you, Frank said. She paused, then nodded. Take care, Frank. As she turned to go, he called out, Commander, was any of it real? The arrest, the courtroom? Or was that just part of the show? She stopped, half-turned. What do you think? Frank considered the question. Sometimes, the best way to hide is in plain sight. Create a spectacle people remember for all the wrong reasons. She smiled genuinely. You would have made a damn good operative. I'm happy keeping the range running, he said. Someone needs to be here when people like you need a quiet place to practice. 6 months passed. One quiet morning, Frank noticed a young woman, early 20s, alone on the farthest lane. Her movements were practiced, her form surgical. She adjusted for wind instinctively, never checking instruments. just like Hayes had. Frank watched for nearly an hour, then casually approached. "Impressive shooting," he said. "Thank you," she replied politely. "I practice when I can." "Military background?" he asked casually. "College shooting team," she answered. "A cover story, clean and hard to disprove." He nodded, playing along. "You're welcome here anytime. We get all kinds." As she packed up, he watched her motion, deliberate, fluid, trained. Later that evening, Frank pulled out the card Commander Hayes had given him. He hesitated for just a moment, then dialed. A voice answered. Neutral, precise. Blue water, still horizon. Frank responded with the phrase Wells had taught him. "Go ahead," the voice said. "I met someone today. Female, early 20s. Precision shooter. Claimed she was from a college team, but her technique says otherwise. Either she's yours, or she should be." There was a pause. "Noted," the voice said. "We'll look into it. Is Commander Hayes still active in this area?" Frank asked. Another pause, longer this time. "That name is not in our current operational database." Frank understood. "Of course. Just curious." 3 days later, she returned, this time with a man in his 50s. Confident. Authority in his gait. They trained together in near silence, their interaction subtle but telling. Teacher and student. When they finished, the man approached Frank. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, using Frank's last name, though Frank had never introduced himself. "I understand you made a call." "I did." "Good eyes." "She's part of our evaluation program. Shooting here was part of her test to blend in. You spotted her within an hour." "She's skilled," Frank said, "which is why we value people like you. Sometimes talent spots talent better than we do." The young woman joined them. "How'd I do?" she asked, dropping the pretense. "You need to work on hiding your wind corrections," Frank said. Commander Hayes did the same thing. The man raised an eyebrow at the name, but said nothing. The girl nodded. "May I come back?" "Anytime," Frank replied. "Just maybe miss on purpose every now and then if you want to keep your cover." The man handed Frank a new envelope, a card with a different number and a symbol Frank instantly recognized. Naval Special Warfare. "We're always looking for observers," he said. "You ever want a formal role, we'd make room." Frank tucked it into his wallet, right next to Hayes's. The next morning, a package waited for him at the range. Inside, a thermal-capable spotting scope with encrypted comms hardware. No sender. Just a handwritten note in familiar cursive. "Keep watching, Frank."